In this video, I'm going to give a quick run through of all the sigils in DMM mode Armageddon. There's no official document for all these sigils yet, so I've just gone ahead and made my own. Sigils are power-ups to your character. You can use 3 of these at a time, and they fall into 3 different categories. You've got your combat ones, utility ones, and skilling ones. Use any combination at the same time. You must be unskulled and at a bank to attune these sigils to your character to be able to use them. Throughout DMM mode, you can gain sigils by killing monsters and even skilling this time around, as long as you're doing so outside of a safe zone. Sigils are untradeable, however you can buy and sell them through the Grand Exchange. If you die with sigils on you that are unattuned, these will be lost on death. Any sigils that are in your bank, they are fine, they are safe, and any sigils attuned to you are also safe. Let's get right into it. There's 3 different tiers of sigils. Tier 1 are your weaker sigils, Tier 2 stronger, and Tier 3 most powerful. Tier 2 and Tier 3 sigils will only be obtainable from drops or skilling in the higher bracket worlds. However, these still will be purchasable off the Grand Exchange in those lower level worlds if you are rich enough. Well, seeing as there's no place that has all the sigil information so far, I've just made my own document, which we're going to go through now. Start off with Sigil of Resistance. All attacks from monsters are reduced by 25%. Not too great. Better than nothing if you don't have any other sigils early on. Sigil of Resilience. Hit points restore rates 15 times faster than normal. This is actually very strong because it stacks with rapid restore, regen bracelets, hit point capes. You could be getting up to 60 hit points back every single minute for using that. Don't sleep on it. Sigil of Consistency, arguably one of the best sigils in the game early on. Every attack you do deals 1 damage to a target. So if you're hitting something with a short bow and bronze arrows, you're hitting a 1 every single time. You can kill green dragons early on, always hitting. Black dragons, just very, very useful. Great for training, getting that additional damage. You will want to have this sigil. Sigil of Rigorous Ranger. Range accuracy is increased by 20 and 50% chance of saving ammunition. Nice to have an extra range accuracy, but you have others unlocked straight away, so this is not that needed. Sigil of Meticulous Mage. Magic accuracy increased by plus 40. This is massive, especially early on when you don't have much mage accuracy at all, and late game when you want that additional accuracy using freezes on people. You also have 50% chance of saving runes or staff charges. So if you want to train magic, get this. It's going to save you a lot of money. Sigil Death Strike, 20% more accuracy against NPCs. Very useful to have. Sigil Agile Fortune. When a Mark of Grace appears, you also get 10,000 coins alongside it. Now this sigil is nice to have. You unlock it straight off the bat, get it from your starter crate, and go train agility, use it in that first hour, get the additional coins you can. I think you can get about 10 Marks of Grace an hour on a course. So while late game it's not too useful, having that extra chance for 100k cash early on is massive. Sigil of the Hoarding. You get triple rates for Winter Todd, Tempros, or Guardians of the Rift, and also receive 3 times the amount of reward points. If you're doing these minigames, definitely stick this on. You want this for the extra points. Get Tome of Fire quite quickly, Tome of Water. Sigil of Sustenance, 50% chance to not consume secondary ingredients when creating potions. There's tons of secondary ingredients in mode. This is not very useful at all. Sigil of Forager, always gain double resources from mining, fishing, and woodcutting and farming. Doesn't stack with the other variants of this that do the same thing. Has been nerfed since last time, which it used to give 3 times, now it's only 2, but this is still very useful to have. Sigil of the Storage, 90% chance to send your newly gathered materials to the bank when mining, fishing, or woodcutting or farming. Again, nice to have, good for AFKing, especially if you want to train far away from a bank when no one can find you. Sigil of the Abyss, gain 5 times as many runes as usual when crafting. Very, very useful to have. You can make a lot of money early if you want to make nature runes or lore runes. Sigil of the Alchemaniac, high level alchemy is 30% extra coin. Again, just great for money early on. Alch everything you can find, get that additional coins. There's loads of rune or addy drops early that people will be selling. And this just means that alchemy drops throughout dev mode just have that extra 30% value. Sigil of the Food Master, you have 40% chance to not consume food when used, 6-second cooldown. This is okay, quite a nice thing to have, but there's no really situation where you need that much food in dev mode, so not too useful. This one, however, Sigil of the Well-Fed, 30% chance to gain twice the number of hit points from any food or potion consumed. This is actually very good because if you're tanking someone and you get that double hit point proc from one of your food pieces, like eating a shark, you can get 40 hit points back and tank so much better. This does work on brews as well, and it even overheals you. If you're sat at 99 hit points and you drink a brew, instead of getting healed an extra 16, you're going to get healed 32 and go all the way to 131 hit points. Same thing with anglerfish. You can now boost your hit points all the way up to 142 if you get this proc. Sigil of the Potion Master, 20% chance to not consume potions when using them. Not too useful. Potions are quite cheap on demo mode. Maybe in the multi-final people want to have this one on so they get extra brew sips or restore sips. Sigil of Eternal Jeweler. All jewelry that has charges now doesn't use any charges. This will be very useful for when people want to do their clue scrolls or early game teleports around the game. Speaking of clue scrolls, Treasure Hunter Sigil, 3 times more common clue scroll drops. Sigil of Mobility, teleports do not consume runes and do not grant any XP. You will need to have the runes to cast the teleport though. Very useful early on when you only have 1 or 2 lore runes. Would recommend trying to pick this up quickly. Sigil of Exaggeration, all non-combat skills are permanently boosted by +5. Great if you're trying to boost up your stats to do a quest or do some skilling method. Helpful early on if you got it for agility to get the next course quicker or less chance of falling, say at the agility pyramid. Right, and now we are on to the 3 new sigils for Armageddon. Firstly, Sigil of Barrows. Barrows armor no longer degrades and you get 40% accuracy when using Barrows weaponry against players or NPCs. Now, this might be very good. I haven't seen the numbers for this yet. I'm just wondering, does this mean someone direct bombing you is going to have such great accuracy now they can one-hit you? Have to wait and see. Right, Sigil of the Lip, that's all I'm going to say. Grants 2 times your agility level as XP when running. Works every 10 ticks and doesn't work in a safe zone. Could be useful for getting additional agility levels when you're running around doing stuff, but overall, agility levels aren't that big this demo mode because you have unlimited run G, so you no longer need to worry about getting that up so much. And finally, Sigil of Deception, automatically re-pickpocket NPCs until you're unable to do so. This will be very useful for people who want to just AFK, gain some XP. You do need to remember though that pickpocketing in safe zone won't give you any loot, so find a good spot to do this and hopefully no one PKs you. Right, moving on to the tier 2 sigils, and there are a lot of these and some of them are quite powerful. Firstly, the Sigil of Augmented Thrall. Max hit of thralls are now 5 times. This is increased from last year where it was only 3 times. So your thralls can hit up to 15 now, and it's going to be insane damage. You're going to want to have the Sigil for any PVM you do. Sigil of the Lightbearer. Special attack regeneration becomes 15 seconds per 10%. If you want to use that over Lightbearer ring itself, that's now 10% every 10 seconds. Sigil Precision, 50% more accuracy in all styles against monsters. Basically a better version of Death Strikes, good for PVMing, or even just train some Slayer against some of those high defense monsters. Sigil of the Specialized Strikes. This reduces the cost of your special attacks by 10%. So if you want to use a DDS, that's now 15% spec, Dragon Claws are 40% spec, and so onwards. They're very useful for PKers. You want to have as many specs you can with your VLSs and Void Wakers. Sigil of the Porcupine, a very strong one, especially at the low brackets. You deal 4 recoil damage to your attacker every time you get hit, and the effect lasts for 15 seconds. So if your opponents put a bleed on you and you activate this, they start getting hit 4 damage every time that bleed ticks. It'd be very interesting to see, especially with those new weapons in the game, like the Atlatl that deal bleed damage. In the lower bracket worlds, 3 to 50 and 51 to 70, the damage has been reduced to 2 instead of 4 because this would have been far too strong. Sigil of the Binding. Activate the Sigil to get 75% magic actually buff on your next binding spell. Might be quite useful early on if you want to get the freezers, but there are a lot of other sigils that just seem stronger than this, so I don't know how useful it will be. Sigil of Fortification. Your range defense, stab, slash, and crush defense all increased by plus 50. If you want to tank against some people, that's great. It's what? Is that like adding plate body stats? Very useful to have as extra defense bonus. Now we come on to the starter sigils. You'll be able to choose one of these 3 at the start of your game. Sigil of the Ruthless Ranger. Upon dealing range damage, you have a 10% chance to cripple the target's movement. This will deal 15 damage bleed over the next 6 seconds and will drain 15% run energy in that time. The damage is doubled against targets with less than 10% run energy. Target can only suffer from one crippling effect at a time, and in lower bracket world 3 to 50, this damage is only 10 instead of 15. Very strong sigil. I mean, everyone's going to have unlimited run energy now, but if you can reduce people's run energy with Morrigan's throw axes and get them down, you can deal those extra double hits. That'll be very strong. Sigil Formidable Fighter. Your melee accuracy is increased by plus 30 in stab, slash, and crush. And on your successful hit, you have a 30% chance to deal an additional 10 damage. This does not work for special attacks, but if you want to train early on, this could be some massive damage increase. Get your stats up quicker. And finally, the other sigil you could choose for starting is the Menacing Mage. And this is like the range sigil. You have a 10% chance to curse the target, dealing an 18 damage bleed over 6 seconds. And this will heal you for the same amount. This sigil will be nerfed slightly in the 3 to 50 bracket. Heal and damage reduced to 12 from 18. Next up, we're on to some of the skilling sigils that are tier 2. Firstly, Sigil of the Hunter. You gain 3 Chinchompas per successful Chinchompa capture. Very good for money making. PKs want those chins early on to gain their levels and range. And you can make a lot of money if you do want to train Hunter and catch chins. Sigil of the Infernal Chef. 20% chance to instantly cook fish that are caught. And you don't need the cooking level to cook these. Very useful for training 2 skills at once. This is nerfed since last time. Last time it was a 100% chance, but they want to keep resource values a little bit higher. So you can actually have a reason to train cooking. Still a very good sigil to have. Do an Enhanced Harvest. Triple resources from mining, fishing, and woodcutting or farming. Doesn't stack with the other versions of this. If you're training skilling, then you want to have this on for that extra money. And Sigil of the Infernal Chef, 20% chance to instantly make bars when you mine. So if you're mining an iron bar, you get 20% chance to get a steel bar sent to the bank. You stack this up with your Enhanced Harvest, that's 3 steel bars sent to the bank. And for money making, once you get a higher mining level, you can do it for things like rune ore. We're making a lot of money. Sigil of the Nature, choose your own farming contracts, but also farming cycles occur every minute instead of 5 minutes, so your crops grow 5 times quicker. Great to put on if you want to train some farming levels, grow a tree and 5 times quicker. Sigil of Devotion, drop bones are automatically buried. Ashes from these are scattered. Prayer XP from this is gained 200%. Prayer is pretty fast in Dead mode, but if you are training somewhere that drops a lot of bones, that could be useful to have. People, especially bursting or barraging monkeys, quite often like to put this one on. In a few hours, you'll get up to 90 prayer or so just from bursting or barraging. Sigil of the Bloodhound, 75% chance for a clue scroll to instantly return the casket. This is massive this time around, especially with all of the points you can get from completing clue scrolls. Everyone who's competing for points is going to be doing a lot of clue scrolls this time around, so they're going to be wanting this sigil. Sigil of the Faith, 40% chance to gain twice the number of prayer points when consuming prayer restore potions. Not too big a deal. Sigil of Prosperity, 20% increased chance to receive loot from the global Dead mode drop table. So this is your chance to roll on the sigil table or get the rune drops, herb drops, potion drops. Very useful to have, especially if you're barraging or bursting. Get a lot of extra money from using this one. Sigil of Slaughter, this has again been nerfed since last time. It's now cost you 60 Slayer points to choose your own Slayer task. And if you're keeping this sigil on while you're doing your task, there's 50% chance not to. This is basically an extended task as well if you do keep the sigil on. The fact it costs 60 Slayer points now means it's going to be more difficult to like spam use and choose every single task you want. Probably only useful if you want a specific task like Kraken or something, or some monster you can only kill on task. Sigil of the Fortune Farmer, newly dropped clues are stackable. Well, with everyone going for clue scrolls for points, you're going to want to have the sigil. Sigil of Versatility, swapping spellbooks instantly outside combat. Very handy thing just to have in the bank for Dead mode if you want to change from Ancients to Archaea spellbook or even regular magic just to teleport around the game. Sigil of the Serpent, activate to cure venom and poison and gain immunity for 10 minutes. This is just not that useful in Dead mode. You can get anti-venom potions very easily. There's no reason to ever really use this sigil. Sigil Preservation, stats boosted above your base level will not drain over time. So if you want to have combat potions on, then never drain down. Or if you're skilling and say you got your pie boost or whatnot, that will keep your boosted stats the whole time. Be quite useful. And now we're on to the new tier 2 sigils. Firstly, Sigil of Revoked Limitation. This allows Revenant weapons to give their 50% damage and accuracy buff everywhere in the game, not just the Wilderness. This is going to be massive. Rev weapons are so strong with that buff in the Wilderness. So I think they're going to be one of the strongest weapons everywhere in the game now. This is only for NPCs, not on players, so there's not going to be too many PKs running around for them, but this will be a very used sigil. The only issue is Rev weapons are so rare and so hard to get. There's going to be far more of this sigil than Rev weapons, so Rev weapons will keep a good price and this will be a cheap sigil. Sigil of Adroit. Increase your accuracy for 1% against players and minions for every hit point you're missing. So if you're on 1 hit point, you're now going to have an extra 98% accuracy against enemies. Now this could make for some fun videos if people want to go DH bombing, and I do look forward to someone trying that. Although I don't know how good having additional, say, 98% accuracy is. Will people still just hit a lot of zeros, maybe? Sigil of the Onslaught. Increase the number of targets at chins and ancient magics and hit from 9 to 11. Might be useful for people bursting, but not too massive. Sigil of Restoration, however. This is your soul split. On successful hit, restore 10% of the damage dealt, rounded up to your hit points. So if I hit a 50, I get 5 hit points back. This is going to be so massive for all combat throughout the game, and especially doing raids. This is like your better Blood Fury that's going to work everywhere and for every combat style. Won't work on multi-attacks, but if you're doing raids, you can pretty much do 0 food runs now because of this sigil. Sigil of the Last Recall. While this was in last demo mode, it's now been changed to a tier 2 sigil instead of tier 3 and has a slightly longer cooldown of 5 minutes. You just teleport back to the location where you recently teleported from. Can be useful. And what's always good for this one is if you have a teleport spot that you want to get back to, you can then unattune the sigil, store it in your bank, and go back there when you need to. Finally, we are on to the 3 sigils that will probably be the most used in demo mode. Sigil of the Swashbuckler, Gunslinger, and Arcane Swiftness. Now, these sigils replace Sigil of the Ninja that was around last demo mode and was a little bit too powerful. This sigil reduced all weapons that had an attack speed of 5 and above by 1. So your VLSs that are 5 tick are now 4 tick. Rune crossbow, that's 5 tick, goes down to 4 tick. Other weapons, twisted bow now hitting quicker, Tombkin Shadow hitting quicker. And the ninja sigil was used everywhere and was costing hundreds of mils because of how strong it is. Now it's been split up into 3 different sigils, 1 for range, 1 for mage, and 1 for melee. And you cannot use these sigils with each other, so you're going to have to choose which combat style you want to buff up and which one you want to go for this time round. Make PKs quite a lot weaker, but it should be a bit more balanced. I mean, most times when you're doing PVM, you're going to have one combat style where you want to buff up mostly. That'll still be good. It will not work with Morrigan's Throaxes, Bofa, or Crystal Bow. That's another thing to bear in mind. But these sigils being tier 2 this time round, there should be much more of these in the game, more common, a lot cheaper price, but they'll still be very sought after, and everyone's probably going to want every style of these. Now we're moving on to the tier 3 sigils, which are the most powerful. If you want to get these sigils yourself as drops, they will only be available on the 90 to 111 combat bracket world and the 111 to 126 worlds, the top 2 tiers. You can still buy any sigil through the GE if you want to though. Firstly, we have the Sigil of Titanium. All attacks from monsters are reduced by 60%. This is a very good sigil for PVM, and especially if you're going to a place where you're going to take a lot of damage. Last time I found it was useful at Armageddon God Wars and raids. Because I'm not very good at raids, it was useful to have all the damage reduced. Next up, we've got Sigil of Finality. This sigil will give you 100% accuracy on your next special attack. It has a 30-second cooldown. Quite useful if you want to land a Dragon Warhammer spec, or if you're PKing and you want to use a Dragon Skim spec to knock someone's prayer off. Usually this sigil isn't too expensive though, as not too many people want to use it. Sigil of Prior's Protection. This sigil reduces the damage you take if you pray correctly. So if you're praying melee and someone hits you with melee, you take 35% less damage. However, you will also take 5% extra damage if you get hit off the wrong style. So if you're praying melee and someone uses mage on you, you can get hit 5% higher. Could be useful if you're getting your prayers correctly a lot of the time, or in situations where there's bosses with a lot of chip damage, you can reduce that when you pray correctly. Sigil of Aggression, one that all the PKers want. All attacks deal 10% more damage, and you also take 5% more damage from all sources. People like to use this one. You want to hit big, but at the same time, you got that little bit more risk to it, taking 5% more damage as well. Sigil of Rampage. If you attack with alternating combat styles, so say if you use range, then mage, then range, then mage, or range, then melee, then mage, then range, or so on, any combination, as long as you're not hitting with the same combat style twice in a row, you will start stacking up Rampage. And for each Rampage stack, you get an extra 3% damage and accuracy, up to 3 stacks total. So if you're alternating combat styles, you can get yourself 3 stacks of Rampage and hit 9% higher and have 9% more accuracy. Sigil of the Woodcraft. Basically, chopping trees will now give you planks instead of logs, but you are required to pay money for each plank that you're creating. Sigil of the Remote Storage. This is a great sigil for any of you skillers or anyone who wants to AFK skill. Resources from mining, fishing, woodcutting, and farming just automatically get sent to your bank. Next up, we have the Sigil of Guardian Angel. Useful if you're someone like Skillspecs who dies a lot, because instead of having your bank wiped, you get to keep all of the stuff when you die. You don't drop a bank key anymore. For most people, you're not going to have too much from your bank worth risking, so you don't need to use this sigil. But if you do have a giant bank, or you want to go do something very dangerous and don't want to lose all your stuff, this can be a good sigil to have. Finally, we've got the 2 new sigils for tier 3. Firstly is the Sigil of Meticulousness, which grants 75% accuracy against NPCs. This is just your best DVM sigil now with the extra accuracy. You're going to have so much extra accuracy this time that you shouldn't be hitting zeros at all. Be very helpful. And finally, you have the Sigil of Rampart, which should just be called Sigil of having a Din's Bulwark on your head, because it gives you 100 stab, slash, crush, and range defense. That is going to be quite strong if you just want to be tanky. You can pray mage to reduce that damage and just tank all the other combat styles, which will be quite handy. Overall, this time around, I honestly think some of the tier 2 sigils that we've got are so strong that they deserve to be tier 3 sigils. But the fact that tier 2 sigils are going to be more common should be very great, and everyone should have access to these. It's going to be a great time all around. If you do have any questions, chuck them in the comments as usual. I'll try and answer anything I can about Devon mode, or find out the answers if I don't know.